is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Abhishek Nagaraj, who I will call Dr. Raj, and his lovely wife, Anushka Gaglani. They are founders of True Blue Dentistry, Steger Smiles, and Blue Island Smiles in Burbank and Chicago, Illinois, with state-of-the-art dental offices serving a wide demographic and providing comprehensive dental care for all ages. They focus on painless dentistry with a completely digital practice renowned for superior care, expertise, and outcomes. Dr. Raj graduated with a DDS from NYU College, which is where what is it? 7% of all U.S. dentists graduated from there with a DDS degree as an international dentist in 2014. His passion lies in buying practices and scaling them up to $1 to $1.5 million by using tools of patient education, empowering team members, and by putting the patient first. His core focus is to enhance dental experiences by providing same-day comprehensive dental care to patients and education. In his spare time, he loves watching thrillers, playing with his dog Pumpkin, and connecting with people of different business backgrounds. He is a member of the ADA, the AGD, the Illinois State, the Chicago Society. Dr. G graduated from the University of Illinois at Chicago College of Dentistry. She is passionate about combining the business of dentistry with quality dentistry and believes both can be achieved. Her goal is to provide stellar dental experiences through same-day comprehensive care, and she too likes her dog Pumpkin. Did you bring him to the show? I mean, is he going to come up and come on the show? I got 4 dogs, and you can have all 5 of them. My God! Every morning I wake up, I'm like, what the hell do they do now? Thank you so much for coming on the show because it seems like the business model of healthcare is really rapidly changing. I mean, I cut my teeth in fast food, which didn't start until the interstates were developed. After Dwight Eisenhower built all these interstates for the first time in America, people started going further than 50 miles away from home. I read a stat that before the interstate, 90% of Americans were born, lived, died without ever going 100 miles from home. And then they built these interstates, and when they got to the next city, they wanted to see something familiar. There was the franchise, but it's been pretty steady. I mean, it really has been steady. McDonald's was number 1, Burger King number 2, Wendy's number 3. The founder of Wendy's died, and his daughter finally made all these about 100 little changes that her stubborn dad would never do, and actually finally passed Burger King for the first time. And she didn't even hold that spot for an hour, and then Chick-fil-A comes out of nowhere and beats everyone, and they're not even open on Sunday. And I really, really believe that with all the talk about DSOs and everything, it's probably going to be another 20, 30 years before the business model kind of stabilizes. And you guys are really, really different. You're thinking outside the box. Who's the brains behind the operation? Which one of you? Is it him or her?
So we actually follow the EOS model, and he's the integrator, so he handles a lot of business, and I'm the visionary. Those are the roles we've been assigned.
So you say that so Dr. G is the visionary, and you say Raj is more the COO, the operations?
I think right now we're probably both.
We're both about
CEO level.
You're both what level?
We've just differentiated our roles. Entrepreneur operating system lets us do that, where we can put our structure before our vision. We have a 10-year target, and we're building our accountability chart, where I sit in the integrator's role, where I integrate our meetings to where I'm the glue, and I kind of oversee all the practices. She's the visionary, where she comes up with the creative idea. She's working on our culture. And really kind of seeing where the company, what other things the company could be doing along the way.
First, I want to get, where does this come from? I mean, most dentists, they're like a chef. They want to go in the kitchen and make lasagna, and they want a new recipe, and they just love working with their hands. I mean, for me, the dream is a patient comes in, and they're in so much pain they couldn't sleep, and they're holding their face, and I love it when you say comprehensive same-day dentistry, because so many dentists, they don't work. They don't hustle. I mean, they're like, oh, I can't do that today because lunch is coming in 30 minutes and they're going to Subway. Some guy couldn't go to sleep last night and you're putting him off for a Subway sandwich. I mean, my God, could you imagine me that patient? Sorry, the doctor cares more about a foot-long sandwich than you. They just don't hustle. I mean, but so I'm wondering, where does this come from you guys? I mean, why most dentists just do that? Then here you are, and you've already got 3 offices, and you have all this intense vision. What's driving this? Were your parents entrepreneurs, or is it going to come back to the dog pumpkin?
She has a lot to do with it. We have to give her a good one.
Absolutely.
No. So we have the 5 practices.
And we have the sixth that's coming along right now. One of the things that I guess that drives us is my parents are not entrepreneurs, and neither is actually one of your mom
parents are actually entrepreneurs in the medical field. My mother is a physical therapist, and she has her own practice. To a smaller level than us, but still, she's been a great role model.
I think to me, I got exposed to dentists here in the U.S. when I was 2010, when I was still trying to get into a program in the States. I kind of went and shadowed a doctor who was entrepreneurial, and he was actually the first guy who hired me for my first job when I graduated in 2014. I think he played a big role in shaping how I think about group dentistry and group practice. Dr. Mirza, one of my first mentors. And then, of course, I've had other associate docs who worked for him who've gone on to do the multi-practice model. What really drives us is the fact that us being dentists are really, driving that bus. And that's kind of how we'd like to keep it.
So are you, when you talk about multi-practice, so do you have a cookie cutter approach? I mean, is it like a 12 operatory that, are they all the same, or are you doing mergers and acquisitions where you just buy different practices and so talk about your business model.
Sure. So typically one of the things that we do is we usually buy practices that are doing anywhere from 100 to 300K in revenues and ramp them up to about $1 million, $1.2 million in year 1 and $1.5 million in maybe year 2 or year 3. So typically we're looking at, practices that are kind of dated and where the dentist is kind of on their way out and really they have no motivation to do any more dentistry. That's kind of the offices that we've bought and acquired. So you can call them acquisitions, but they're really small acquisitions. So essentially like startups. And we really have to kind of put in all the groundwork to update the office, bring in all new equipment and all digital.
Technology.
And then ramp them up that way. So it's a combination. It's a hybrid model is I'd like to put it.
So let me get this right. I'm a slow note typer. So you buy practices between 100,000 to 150,000 to 300,000 a year in revenue?
That is correct.
Yep.
And ramp them up to ramp them up to what?
To about $1 million, $1.2 million in year 1 or 1.5.
So I didn't even know there were practices doing 150,000 a year. I mean, what is a practice that's doing 150,000 a year? I mean, is it just someone who works 1 day a week or 2 days a week or is 80 years old or what's going on there?
It's much older retiring dentists. For example, one of the practices he was doing probably 8 days a month.
Okay.
So,
that makes sense.
They're not working every day for some of them.
Yeah, I can, okay, that makes more sense. And when you buy a practice, for 150 to 300,000, is there a minimum size? Well, first of all, do you want the real estate too? Are you looking for land and building, or do you just want retail, rental?
Typically, yes, real estate. Typically, we want to, I think we like to be landlords. It's just not wanting to pay rent.
Deal with landlords. Some crazy stories.
Say what?
Yes.
What'd you say?
I said, or deal with landlords. We've heard some crazy stories.
Yeah, I mean, well, so many different people have so many different opinions that are legend. Like a good friend of mine growing up in Wichita, Dan Carney, that was the founder of Pizza Hut. He hated real estate. He just wanted to rent, but he said he had to buy real estate. And then there was Sam Walton, just 6 hours down the street in Bentonville, and him and Helen were renting to save cash. But then one of his landlords screwed him out of a deal because he didn't tell him he wasn't going to renew his lease till like the last minute. And then that guy opened up his version of Walmart across the street. And Sam was so pissed, he owned all of his land ever since. So you like to buy dental practices, land and building. And that's McDonald's. I mean, McDonald's is a real estate company. I mean, if you really look at their balance sheet, every month, 38,000 McDonald's pay rent to McDonald's. And I'm not going to say they don't care about the hamburgers and fries, but that is not their top priority. I mean, their top priority is a real estate business. That's what Rick Kirshner does. Rick Workman in Effingham is the billionaire with Heartland, but the other one is Rick Kirshner with Comfort Dental. And he owns, I think, 300 offices, but he owns land and building. Then he sells it to the dentist, and then he leases it back. So every month he has 300 dentists paying him a rent check off of 300 paid-off properties. Because just like McDonald's, he buys the land and building, fixes up the dental office, sells that as to dentists as a Comfort Dental, but he retains the property. And he's got, when he's one of my friends where he wants to have lunch, he sends his jet to pick me up. And I'm not that impressed because he flies his dog around too. So I'm just another dog. But so when you buy the land, and so you always want the land and building. So you have 3 open, you have 5 open and a 6th one about to go open.
Correct. Yeah.
That is correct.
And you own the land and building on all?
So on 4 of them, it's not always possible to buy the building or land. Sometimes it's more about the location, but 4 of them we do. And
so I'll say to the kids in dental school is that the primary thing is the dentistry if you're a dentist, but a real estate model is very, very nice. So Dr. Raj and Dr. G by practice doing $150,000 if they get the land and they prefer the land and building. Is there a particular size? Some DSOs want a certain number of operatories. What's your do you have any requirements?
Yeah, I think we're not a cookie cutter model. I think whatever fits into that demographics and whatever we think that practice is worth. So typically we obviously want at least 6 to be able to have 6 to 8 ops in that. And we've heard of stories where they have 12, 15, 20 ops, but I don't think that's our model. I think we are okay with 6 to 8 ops with having 1 to 2 quality dentists in there, with 1 to 2 quality hygienists. I think that's our model, and that where quality can actually be controlled, as opposed to we're not just a mill and churning out a ton of dentistry where we can't oversee any of that.
And again, this is what I call a rich world American problem, because when you go to Tokyo, where land is $1 million a square meter, you will find a 3-operatory dental practice that is owned by 7 dentists, and they'll work, 6 to noon, noon to 6. They all get their hours in, but it's spread out over 168 hours. Singapore is almost as insane as Tokyo. And then you go to America and they tell you, well, I don't have space for another operatory. And it's like Doc's private office is like half the size of a Japanese office. And it's like, really? Well, if you were Japanese, I'm really sure you could figure this out. But being an American, maybe that's why they invented the Sony Walkman. I mean, I can still remember buying my first Sony Walkman. It was how they got all that stuff into something so small. But I do notice it's an American thing and a Canadian thing, where it looks like when you walk into a dental office, the first goal was, how do we waste the most number of space? and then even in my little neck of the woods of Phoenix and Ahwatukee, if you just say to me, show me a 4-operatory practice, I can show you that 4-operatory practice in anything from 800 square feet, 2,000 square feet, 2,800 square feet, and then one's like 3,000 square feet. It's like 3,000. Why didn't you just rent the New York Empire State Building? I mean, you could just put 1 chair every 100 floors or something. I mean, it's crazy. So, but you do like 6. You do like to get in 6 operatories.
Yeah, I think at the minimum moving forward, I think we're looking at 6 to 8 operatories.
And what is your model with the dentist? Is it a partnership? Is it employee for life? What is the business model there?
So right now, until now we've had employees, but we are looking at a partnership model moving forward. We kind of want our dentists to have some skin in the game and feel like they're part of something important.
Yeah, and it's a balance. I mean, if they, I look at the turnover in DSOs, so I figure everybody working the DSOs, I mean, there's so many really, really smart people in there. So I said, they can't figure it out. I went to other industries, and I noticed when I talk to big, people that employ people with doctors, 8 years of college, that's a different mindset than running a company with a bunch of people that didn't finish high school or in the Army or something like that. But I talked to law firms and Boston Consulting and Price Waterhouse, and that's what they said too. They say, they tell them, if you come in here and you hustle, you do same day dentistry, you work through your lunch, you get some clients, you get the word of mouth, maybe in 4 or 5 years you'll get partnership. But if they didn't have that light at the end of the tunnel, they think that the aces would be off and somewhere else, and then you get stuck with all the people that aren't even trying to make partnership. They're not hustling. They're not working through lunch. So then you kind of get bogged down with a bunch of entitled people. Obviously, when you're going to be a partner and get married, I mean, that's a serious job interview. You know what I mean? I mean, they take that so serious, but it seems like dentists buy into groups, and they don't take becoming a partner with Frank over here 1/10 as serious as they did when they got married. And dentists, my gosh, again, dentists, lawyers, physicians, they're so overeducated. They read so much. Every one of them is so brilliant that it's hard for them to get along. They don't play nicely together because they're just not going to shut up and take it. They're like, well, in fact, I read a book on that and you're wrong. In fact, I went there on an airplane. They're just, how do you try to get dentists to play nicely in the sandbox?
Well, first of all, have you been listening to us? No, it's I think we have different strengths. I think that's a big positive with us, and we both kind of like different things. So we play off each other's strengths is the main thing. As far as other dentists,
I think, so a part of EOS, I'm going to go back to that. When we came up with EOS, we run on a set of core values. We have 5 core values that we hire and fire people on. Those core values, one of our core values is humility. It's super important for a dentist to be humble. And if they're not, we just won't hire them. And I think so far, our doctors in the group are amazing, and they're very humble, and they have a growth mindset, which is also another core value for us. And pursuit of excellence. So
now, when you say core values, would that be the True Blue Dentistry core values, or Steger Smiles, or what is the parent? What is it?
The parent company, it's called Areo Dental.
So how do you spell that?
AREO.
AREO.
Yep.
Areo
Dental.
One word or two?
Just 2 words.
Okay.
Areo Dental.
So Areo Dental is the parent company, and then it has the brands of True Blue Dentistry, Steger Smiles, all that. Okay, so Areo Dental, 5 core values are humility.
Yes.
I agree. Did you say it was AREO or AERO?
AREO.
AREO? Huh, okay.
Areo.
Yep. Areo, okay. So humility, great one. I agree with that 1,000,000%. I mean, and you saw that you see that right now. Before the pandemic, I never knew there were so many PhD epidemiologists and virologists living around here. I mean, God, you just go home and it's like you're listening to this person. You're like, I had no idea you know more than the 12 epidemiologists today issue. Unbelievable. And they don't even blink. They believe their own bullshit more than anyone. So humility. What was what's the rest?
Team oriented. And growth mindset.
Yeah, pursuit of excellence.
And the last one was committed.
Yep.
Commitment.
Commitment, which includes being professional to reliable to consistent. We combined all those words into commitment.
Nice. So you go get this office. If it's only doing 150 to 300,000 because Doc's old and decrepit, and you know, he's in as bad a shape as I am, then how do you ramp that up to $1 million or $1.5 million? I mean, the average dental office doing $750. So you pass them or double them in a year. So what are you doing to do that? I
think I think we get the right team in place. I think the right dentist plays a huge role in that. When we hire based on these core values, we know that this dentist can ramp it up to about $1 million right off the bat. And hiring team members on these core values, we can do that. And of course, choosing the right location. I think going into it, picking the right demographics, choosing the right location, how much visibility does it have? And of course, throw in some dollars at marketing and, you know, ramp it up with direct mail and some paid clicks, Google ads. And that combination really helps us ramp it up to $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
That is amazing. And you're in Chicago, which, you know, that's how many dental schools are in the Chicago area?
So there's UIC and then there's Midwestern in the
UIC
suburbs.
and Midwestern?
So I believe just 2. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, but it seems like a pretty saturated place for dentistry. I mean, I don't know if it's, I mean, you got the ADA building. I mean, it's really, I kind of think of it as the capital of dentistry in America. I mean, the capital of the country is Washington, D.C., but the capital of dentistry, I mean, every major organization is right down there in Chicago. I mean, I don't care what the name of the society is. They're down there in Chicago. So UIC, Midwestern. So when you buy these dentists, when you interview these dentists, what have you noticed anything between the ones that worked out and were successful and the ones that weren't? I mean, and I'll give you an example of things that or might shock some people, but like with student loans, if you owe less than $25,000 in student loans, you're like 10 times more likely to default than if you owe $500,000. Because, you know, the person 10, 20, 30, they really weren't into school and they were just killing time and going to parties and all that. But the person who's $500,000 in debt, they absolutely wanted to be something and they got it. And I kind of wonder with that dentist sometimes. I mean, you know, you're not supposed to talk about these things, but that's why I call it dentistry insensitive. Like I've always noticed, you hire a Mormon kid out of school and he already had like 2 kids in school and he's going to have like 20 or 30 more. That guy he'll work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week and think he's I'll say, you're working a lot of hours. He's like, no, actually I'm only working half time. I just work 12 hours a day and I take off the other 12, just half a day every day, 7 days a week. I've noticed that some of the single kids with no student loans are infinitely more likely to be lazy than the kid with $500,000 student loans who's married with a kid in the ground. I even saw that with my 4 boys. I mean, 3 of my 4 boys now have dropped a frog, and their work ethic just doubled when they had a baby at home. I mean, you got to be that bird and bring home the worm and drop it in the mouth. And 3 of my 4 boys, I mean, it was a measurable increase in productivity and work and all that stuff when they had a baby. Have you noticed any trends like that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, you know, our most successful dentists are the ones with the growth mindset. They kind of go in every day. And, you know, it's funny, earlier you mentioned the dentist who's like, oh, I need to have my foot long sub. You know, we've gone through that. You know, the one that wants to go out to party and is patient comes second. And that's just not the way that we believe it should be done. So I do agree with you. I think that the dentists who come out, you know, they're hungry. They want to learn. They want to grow. They want to see patients. Those are definitely the more successful ones. And they, like you said, they have loans to pay off. So they are very, very motivated to get things done.
So you would say that a debt is correlated with a growth mindset. You know, that they owe a bunch of student loans or they're going to work harder.
Somewhat, I think so. At least I can experience share for me and for her. We came out with a bunch of debt, and I think that was a motivating factor for me. But after a certain point, it just becomes a means to an end, where you're able to pay your debt, but live and do much much more with all the money that you can make if you have that right mindset, and if you're humble about what you want out of dentistry.
So, what's the opposite of a growth mindset dentist? What would you call that dentist? What's the opposite of a growth mindset? I don't
Somebody
want to
with a
say lazy.
fixed mindset.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Fixed mindset.
A fixed mindset.
A fixed mind. Okay, fixed. This is what I was expecting. This is what I thought. Have you noticed anything? Anything? I'm trying to find things that help dentists during an interview. And by the way, every time I've ever seen a dentist interview someone, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's like the appointment's an hour, and the whole hour he's talking about himself, he's selling his practice, he's talking about everything, and that dentist just sitting there smiling. And at the end of the interview, I'm like, you didn't even ask him a question. I don't even, you're talking to a wall. You're not trying to sell yourself. You're trying to hire someone for a job. And I'm trying to help these guys. What should they be looking for to help them figure out a growth mindset dentist? Because it just blows my mind how when dentists tell me they're patient focused, I mean, it just boggles my mind that they believe it. And there's just like no evidence for it. Their hours are Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5. I mean, all that kind of stuff. And the emergency rooms prove it. 8.5% of emergency room visits are odontogenic in origin. And then the dentists say, they don't even treat us like a real doctor. You're not a real doctor. No one can find you. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're unlisted. Your patients all end up in emergency rooms where real doctors take it from there. So I'm just trying to help them find that growth mindset. Have you noticed any difference in correlation between dentists born not in the United States? Are they more or less likely to be growth or fixed minded?
I don't think necessarily. Yeah. No.
I think we have dentists who grew up here and who have extreme growth mindsets. American dentists who went to school here. They're great personalities, super humble, and they really know what they want, in 10 years or 5 years. And I think that's a part of the whole interview process, is really getting down to what they really want out of dentistry and life. And if we can do that, spend more time on the front end, we truly believe that we'll spend less time with them on the back end trying to make them better, because we don't believe that you can necessarily make people better or change them. They're either wired to have a growth mindset or they're not.
Correct. Yep.
Absolutely. That's what you do when you're young. You argue with people trying to change their mind. And then by the time you're 60, you realize that person's been thinking like that since they were 5 years old. And if they live to be 500, they're going to still think that way. In fact, I really think I've called my 6 grandchildren. I mean, you grew up with your 5 sisters, and I had my 4 kids. And now my grandkids, I mean, the oldest one is now 13, and I'm pretty much calling them at 5. I mean, at 5 years old, you know who this little kid is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you don't have to wait till they're 50 to find out. I mean, people are born, and they they are what they are. So you have 5 offices with a 6th one coming, and you own the land of building in 4. And what is the average number of operatories?
Average would be about 5.
5. And which the first thing I think of, here's what I do when I take that in my mind. I'll take the 168 hours in a week, and then I'll times it times 5, and now I know I have 840 hours of operatory available. Now, if you're an American, you just say, well, we're only open 32 hours a week, so you knock off 80% of that, and then you say, oh, well, Chicago's crowded. There's not room for another dentist. Of course, you couldn't find a dentist open on Sunday. You'd find a mermaid riding a unicorn 3 times before you found a dentist open on Sunday. So it's really operatory hours. And then in your model of that 5 or 6 ops, how many dentists would be in each of those locations? How many would work there?
Typically we're a 1 dentist model so far, but we are adding part-time dentists. So you could say 1.5. Dentists on 6 days, on a 6-day work week.
And let me tell you, I don't want this to come off and say, this is right and this is wrong. I say everything has a trade-off. So what I've seen is when, and lots of people that own hundreds of offices, we've talked about this for a long time, where when you have one office and it's 4 to 6 chairs, whatever, the whole staff only has one 400-pound gorilla to look at, and the staff problems are just non-existent. And if you do have any, it's got to be the doctor or the office manager. I mean, it's the doctor is the leader of the culture. And when you have 2 doctor offices, now half the assistants are looking at this one, that one, and there's all this confusion. And I mean, every DSO captain Kingpin has told me that, my gosh, you want to utilize your operatory hours more. You'd like to, for the patient, if you're a patient focused, like the only 3 publicly traded dental offices in the world, 2 in Australia, 1 in Singapore, they're all open 7 to 7, 7 days a week. Well, in doing that, you're going to have a bunch of doctors. So then your grade from the patient with convenience and availability goes real sky high, but then your management problems go sky high too. And if you don't like to manage people and drama and all that crap, then you just keep 1 doctor offices. But once you try to increase that utilization and keep them open longer, now you're going to have management issues of and it'll be more and more important to HR to get people that can play nicely in the sandbox. Which one of the values is that? You said team oriented.
Yep.
And that's the team player. That's just Okay. So you're 1 doctor now, but you're thinking a 1.5 doctor, or what are you?
Yep.
So we're heading to the 1.5 doctor model, and eventually the 2 doctor model, I think, per office with 1 to 2 hygienists.
And are you branding? I notice you're not calling them all Aspen. I mean, Aspen, everyone you drive by, you see Aspen, and they're building this big national brand. And again, the trade-off was I couldn't believe it. It was back in 2012 when PBS did a documentary on Aspen and all that stuff. And I mean, so that's the negative side of that is you're just one big target to be shot. Whereas Heartland, they wouldn't even know where Heartland office is. In fact, today, bizarre, I've had 2 different LinkedIn messages and text asking me if they can have a zip code breakdown of a certain DSO of where their offices are and everything. And I don't play with them because I don't know who they are or whatever. But again, it goes to show that they don't know where these offices are because they all have different names. So where are you with that? Are you thinking you'd rather have one big brand, Dr. Raji Pumpkin Dental the Third, or are you going to go with True Blue, Steger, Blue Island? What is your strategic approach?
You just gave me a great idea for a name, Pumpkin Dental.
Pumpkin Dental, hell yeah!
So the first 3 we did brand the same. We branded them True Blue Dentistry, but then we kind of decided we wanted to be within the community, right? So we're kind of trending away from that now, and we're going to name it whatever the community is.
With the smiles at the back.
Yeah.
So typically we're in the town of Blue Island, so we've just simplified it to Blue Island Smiles. We are just simplifying our life and our business model as we kind of go further. And ultimately, there isn't that much to a name, but as you rightly said, Howard, is they can, one negative experience in one dental office can then relate to another dental office with the same name. I think that's much easier in today's world, especially with so much social media out there. I think we're going to brand differently as we go along. So we're more personalized to that town or that city that we go to.
Well, today was a day I learned there's a Blue Island, Illinois. I was not aware of that. And that is one great thing with the brand. So if everybody lives in Blue Island and it's Blue Island Dental, at least the name gives you the location. So it comes with the brand. Why is it named Blue Island? It's inland, it's real far, and it's in Illinois. How did
I wondered.
Great question.
Great question.
But our logo has an island with a palm tree coming out of it. So, go figure.
That is wild. And what about dentist experience? I mean, these kids that graduated in the 2020 pandemic. I mean, my heart goes out to them. I've been doing everything I can to help them. Interviewing the DSOs that are like out here. A big hiring was MB2, and a lot of the kids were saying, "Well, who owns that? Why don't you podcast him?" I did, man. I had it out in a couple of days, But I feel bad because the old dentists around here that are pushing 60. I mean, we've tried these young kids out of school, And my God, you better have patience. I mean, they need like 4.5 hours for a occlusal composite, and then I mean, so what's the minimum requirement? Will you take a kid straight out of Midwestern?
Yeah, as long as they fit into our core values, I think that doesn't matter. I think if somebody with the right growth mindset and team oriented and humility will adapt, maybe we will not ramp up as fast as we like to with somebody with a little more experience, but somebody with a little more experience who doesn't fit those core values will also not make us ramp up as quickly. So yes, we have no reservations in who we can hire as long as they fit our core values.
Wow. And so you talk about that. Well, if you take a kid and when dentist says, why do you say you practice dentistry if you've been practicing 20, 30, 40 years? And I said, shit, I'm practicing sleep. I didn't even know what sleep apnea was and all that stuff. I mean, we practice everything we do. So hell, most Americans sleep every single night, and a lot of them need to practice sleep. I mean, it's just crazy. I love it around holidays when you get to see your other family. But I mean, how many of my family members go to bed? They got a big screen TV in their room, their phone's exploding, and they got an 80-pound dog jumping up and down out of the bed, and it's like, and you're like, you can't sleep like that. You need a cold room. We need to get rid of the TV, the phone, and the dog, and they would even consider it. I mean, it's like asking them to go live on the moon, but you're sitting there realizing that the amygdala is going to be freaked out all night long, and they're not going to get the profound sleep. But if you do take these young kids out of school, man, the CE's got to be real important. Is CE a big part of your culture and organization?
Absolutely. I mean, we stress that's one of our biggest things is stressing on education. I think we've seen some people come out of school and they're like, well, I'm a dentist now. Now I know everything. And I think, that's definitely far from the truth. You have to continue to improve yourself and keep up with, new studies, technology, et cetera. So one of the things we do is we actually use Spear online, and we enroll every single one of our dentists in Spear. And so
it kind of standardizes our care. So every biweekly we have a call with our doctors where we're discussing 2 to 3 hours of CEs with them, and we're all talking about. And then we the next 2 weeks we go out and execute that. And that's worked out really well.
And oh my God, Frank Spear was lined up for a podcast. We were all set up. That was the pandemic. That was my first casualty award during the pandemic. I just almost cried when I got the text from MTS. We can't do this. But need to figure out how. So you do Frank Spear online, and how much does that cost for?
It's about it's a couple. I think it's about 2,100 per doctor
per year.
Per year.
2,100 per year.
Correct.
Per year.
And
yes.
what subjects does that cover?
Everything.
Head and
there's
tail
everything.
of dentistry. Literally, it's got 900 hours of CEs. And doctors can 900 hours of education. They can get 400 CEs just off of Frank Spear online.
Yeah, and that is the number one correlating thing I've seen in my 32 years is why, when people say, what's the definition of success? Well, it's got to be your own personal definition. I mean, you got to be happy. You can't live someone else's life. But when I see happy dentists that at the end of their journey, they seem like they were having fun. They seem like they liked it. They told you they liked it. The number one thing I correlated with was 100 hours of CE a year. I mean, that's the only thing, no matter if they went into cosmetic or TMJ or Medicaid or not, or high end or low end, it doesn't matter, because it's not so much just the information, but it's the people you're running with. So if you left dental school and your 5 best friends were the 5 best drinkers in school, and they hated dentistry and they hated everything, and they just drank and bitch and got out, they'll drag you down. I mean, you absolutely are. It's not a pun. It's it's true. You're a sum of the 5 people you spend all your time with. And what I remember the most from all of these institutions, like I spent, 5 weeks at Pankey and I've done all these things, is not the 5 or 6 weeks at Pankey. It's the friends you made. the people, the friends that you made that were going for it. And that's why I started Online CE with Dentaltown in 2004. We put up 400 courses. They've been viewed 1 million times. I'm looking at these Spirit courses. They're amazing. Composite versus ceramic, creating meaningful connections, what we now know, implementing Spear patient education. What's the difference between regular night guard, factors, and maximum intercuspidation? I mean, if you spend 100 hours a year thinking about your craft instead of 100 hours a year wondering who Kim Kardashian's going to marry next week, I mean, you're going to end up in two different places. And my gosh, that is just so cool. So, but back to the Online CE, the one thing that is missing is that, you know, when I went to watch Carl Misch 7 3-day weekends at University of Pittsburgh, again, Carl was amazing, great, but some of the lifelong friends I met there. So on Online CE, how was this pandemic affecting the culture of running with other successful, fun dentists to get you fired up?
Actually, our dentists, because I'm going to go back to that, because we hired them on a set of core values, they are super motivated to do better than any other year. Yeah, and the fact that we can sit down and talk about how we're going to standardize our care and not just throwing things at them. For example, not just telling them to do things because that's going to make us more money. I think they understand that this is something we all need to do as a team. And that's got them really motivated, and they have complete autonomy, right? Each dentist runs one practice. We have a director of operations who helps them hire. They absolutely are a part of the hiring and firing process. So they are completely involved in the day-to-day. And I think that gives them that empowerment to go out and actually do better, because now they know that our other dentists at the other practice is able to ramp up the practice to $1 million. They feel like they can do it too.
One of the biggest issues, period, in dentistry is patient communication, because we sell the invisible. I mean, you guys don't run a flower shop where I can come in and say, well, those flowers look wilted and those look good, give me those. It's not packaged goods where you know the brands, you know. I mean, when I walk into your office and you tell me I have 4 cavities, and I mean, it's like when I go to them, I always go to the same dealer where I bought my car, because when they say to me, did you want, are you hearing those lifters? I don't know what lifters are. I grew up with 5 sisters. I played Barbie dolls till I was 12. I'm the poster child for what happens when you're raised with 5 sisters. I mean, they have to trust you. And so how do you, in fact, there was a great book on it. What is it? Trust at the Speed of Light by Stephen Covey. How do you get dentists who only got to the party because they could sit in the library and knock out A's in trig and calculus and physics and biochem, and they still know how many ATP come out of the glucose in the Krebs cycle? How do you convert that librarian physics guy to communicating trust that you have 4 cavities and be able to communicate that to where the patient trusts you and believes you? How do you pull that off?
Yeah, so I think the main thing, which I think a lot of dentists have gotten on board with, is intraoral photos. We stress a lot on patient communication, and if you're putting up an X-ray on a screen, a patient's not going to be able to read that. So we're very much, every new patient gets photos. Every time you're showing a patient or explaining to them why they need a filling or a crown or whatever it may be, they see a photo of their tooth so they understand what exactly we're planning and why.
And then you sprinkle in a lot of autonomy to the dentist, and along with that, and I think when we have our monthly conversations with them, it's never a conversation of, you could have done this much dollars on this patient. It's always, what did we miss diagnosing, or that we could have diagnosed better, and how could we have presented better? And I think our director does a great job of breaking that down. So it's always putting the patient first. And when we all have a common goal of putting the patient first, unifies us, and that's the vision, and that core focus immediately translates across the company.
Right. And with our dentists, we do teach them, once you kind of go over everything with the patient, you're not sitting here trying to pressure them to do anything. All we're doing is educating them, and consequences. That's it.
And you have the option to do all of it, some of it, none of it. I think every dentist in our company kind of, says the same thing to our patients.
So, how has this pandemic affected you? I mean, you weren't, my gosh, were you hoping you wish you two just would have had your own office and one little place to worry about, and now you're starting to expand and leverage, and you got 5 offices, and then bam, out of nowhere, Corona. Welcome to 2020. Man, this year was dead on arrival. Marco, economist of the ADA, saying that first he thought the industry would contract 30% for the year, and now he's revised his numbers to 38% for 2020. 38%. I mean, hell, we were closed 2 months. So, 2 divided by 12, I mean, there's 16% right there. And so how did you survive that? How did you adjust to that?
Yeah, like you said, we were closed 2 months. We actually still went in for emergencies, but it was stressful because a couple of our dentists were not comfortable. They were kind of very nervous with coronavirus, which was okay. We understand that. But we kept going in for emergencies. And as soon as we were ready to open, we just had an influx, as I'm sure many dentists did, of patients with, pending treatment who just really wanted to come in. I think it was the first time I told my patients, I was like, I think it's the first time people actually want to come to the dentist.
People couldn't wait to get their teeth cleaned. And the pent-up demand was really good for 2 to 3 months, and that seems to have carried over. Of course, it's been 6 months exactly down to when coronavirus happened. So things did slow down a little bit, but it seems like it's ramping back up again.
Now, how we were talking about, how can you find a growth mindset dentist versus you were nice and saying fixed mindset. I was the guy saying lazy bastard mindset. I mean, I truly don't get it. I mean, I've seen this for 32 years. Well, we can't do it now. We're going to lunch. And I'm like, you're going to Taco Bell. I mean, but anyway, these patients that's come back, I mean, I don't know Chicago. I'm here in Arizona where, we just had an election, and I don't want to talk religion, sex, politics, violence, but clearly the country is very divided. I mean, there's 2 camps, and just because one slightly won this time and another one slightly less, I've been watching this. I was born in 1962, and you look at the numbers, when people say it's more polarized now than ever, well, you don't have any data to suggest. You look at the registered voters, Republican, Democrat. It's always been these 2 different divisions. But in Arizona, we're kind of the Florida of the West, and most of the people just think that it's the flu, and they think my 4 boys even think, well, yeah, Dad, you're worried. Hell, you're a grandpa. I ain't worried. So what I've noticed out here is the 40 and under market hasn't even changed. I mean, the lowest the traffic during the height of the newness and the shock and awe of it all, traffic in Phoenix only decreased 20%. And you tell them to wear, so but the older people like me, the 60 and over, they're scared. Well, those are the ones that need all the implants, and, they need a lot of the major dentistry. So have you seen that where a lot of the old people are staying out that need all the work, and you're getting a bunch of young, healthy kids in that need occlusals and buccal pits? Or
yeah, so initially, I think when we first reopened, a lot of the older people were staying away, and then they started slowly trickling in. Now I'm seeing the numbers have spiked a little bit, so they're still a little bit nervous. And it's interesting you mentioned Florida. That's where I grew up, and my parents are there. And
I'm sorry.
No, sorry, you can't.
No, I was joking. I'm sorry. Where in Florida did you grow up?
Melbourne Beach, it's called. It's east of Orlando, on the Atlantic. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And it's got that barrier reef thing going all the way down it.
That's exactly it. Yep.
Yeah, that's wild. My gosh, that would be cool to live on. But anyway, what
until there's a hurricane, then you're between a river and an ocean. That's not fun.
Yeah. Well, actually, I should ask you this question because the old people laugh it off, but young dentists, especially down in Florida, keep wondering. Here's a great practice down there on that barrier reef, but you read all the climate change stuff, and they're like, "Is this thing going to be underwater when I'm as old as Howie?" I mean, things look very different 32 years later. You're a smart person and you live down there. Do you think buying real estate on that ocean level is going to be a bad investment when they're 65 and trying to sell it?
That's a constant debate within our family because my parents live very close to the ocean. I think there are definite changes that we're seeing, but I can't speak to that. I don't know if within, the next 40 years that'll all be gone or if it'll still be incrementally changing.
Yeah. But it is spiking now. It's kind of spiking big. I mean, it's not a little spike. I mean, if you go back to March, they told us, humans are an interesting species. I mean, 90% of them ended up on the northern hemisphere, not the southern hemisphere. And most of them live between the 20 and the 40th parallel. And they say in that region, these viruses die out in the summer and they're strong in the spring and the fall. And they were telling us, my virologist friends at ASU, where I got my MBA, were saying, oh, yeah, it's going to come back in the fall with a vengeance. Do you believe it's coming back right now? I mean, it is November 11th and it is dead winter. I mean, in Arizona, we have to wear long sweatpants now. And I got long sleeves on now. I mean, I was wearing shorts up until Halloween, but so it's full blown winter. Do you think it's coming back with a vengeance or just trending upwards?
I personally think it is coming back with a vengeance. It is flu season, so that does not help things. And I think with people having been cooped up for so long, they're maybe being a little more relaxed than they necessarily were back in March, April, May.
Yeah, I think the numbers are going to go up pretty drastically. But I think people are tired of staying in and the numbers are just going to keep going up. But I don't think that's going to stop people.
Yeah, it's just killing my mom, but it makes you see everything differently. Like, I really thought all my mom's church activities were about church, and now I've been thinking about it. I was talking to my brother the other night. I mean, she doesn't ever talk about any scripture or this or canon law. She doesn't talk about any details of it, and we start realizing it's just a big social thing. I mean, she goes there. I mean, her whole life, all of her friends are at her church, and it's killing her. I mean, the social isolation, and we've taught her Zoom, but you just can't replace going out with your girlfriends with a Zoom call. So what did you have to do on your protocol? I mean, you had to think this out because you weren't just buying one thing, you had to buy 5. And what I noticed with the first viral epidemic that I lived through with the HIV that killed 36 million people is that we made a lot of changes that never went away. Went to gloves, got rid of custodians, bottled water in the op instead of a street line. I mean, just a lot of stuff with the same issues. I can still remember like it was yesterday, those old Kansas dentists when they were told that they had to wear gloves. They were ready to just start shooting you. I mean, they were ready to get their gun and come on, we're going to, they were very, very upset. So none of this is surprising to me about the mask thing. I mean, I lived through it with dentists and gloves. In fact, one dentist, he thought he was so against sit-down dentistry. I mean, he thought that was the end of dentistry. I mean, when he saw some dentist sitting down on the job, he thought that was the sure mark of the sign of the decline of dentistry. But what did you purchase and make changes because of this that you think you'll still be doing 10 years after the epidemic when people won't even remember it?
One thing, of course, face shields. I think everybody incorporated that. Medical grade air purifiers. And then, me personally, I would use level 1 masks. And now we've gone to level 3s with face shield or N95. So I think that's not going anywhere.
I think the level 3 masks are going to stay.
You do.
It's just a subtle change, but I mean, it's just a different mask, but it's not something we've used before. So
do you think the people listening right now, if they wanted to get to know more about you, which website would they go? I mean, you got truebluedentistry.com, and True Blue is not even spelled true. It's TRU.
Yeah.
My God, it's truebluedentistry.com, staggersmiles.com, and Blue Island Smile. Is there one for your parent company, your aerodental.com, or?
Yeah.
We're in the process of building out a website right now for Aerodental.
Yeah.
That's where they would go maybe in the next couple months or 3 months. That's where they would go if they wanted to find some information.
So where are you at in your journey now? You're building your 6th office now?
Yes.
And so that means you've already found a location, land, building. So it's just going through the paperwork or the finance, or where's it at now?
That is correct. We're in the the lease negotiation process right now, but it is pretty much a done deal. And then we will immediately start building out, and then our target would be probably Q2 of 2022 to
2021.
2021. Sorry, to get started on the practice, to open the doors.
To 2021. Man, you just, I can tell you guys are so organized. I mean, you didn't say, yeah, we'll get out in the spring. You get out on 2/2/2021. So this one you leased. You didn't get the land and building, it sounds like, right? You leased?
We leased this one. Yes.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying earlier. The main business is the business, and the secondary business is real estate. And I've had Grant Cardone on the show twice trying to make this point, whereas the reason DSOs do well is because they start with just a group practice. I mean, first you got to get a group practice. You got to learn how to run 2 doctors, and then you got to learn a second location. And these are the baby steps that will determine all your success. You got to remember that the McDonald's brothers, Richard McDonald, when he sold it to the boys in Chicago, he had 9 locations and he couldn't get it working. And, these are absolutely tough times, but Grant Cardone says that you need a full-time employee. If you're going to make money on real estate, you need a full-time employee. And that's why he always recommended to my boys that they start with a 12-unit or a 16-unit duplex, because you could live in one and then you could work the other ones, but you need a full-time person. And so when a dentist owns their own land and building, I mean, it's, I can see it as an investment, but I can't really, no one would say he's in the real estate business. I mean, he just owns his land and building. And I do think it's a mark of a much greater intelligence when you meet a dentist and you find out that they rent their 1,000 square foot office and they own their 4,000 square foot home. They laugh at people who buy an intraoral camera, but then they get a boat. They tease this guy because he got a laser, and then he got a cabin. I mean, so if you sleep 8 hours a day, you're down to 2 8s. And I say, they should be very similar. Your toys should be evenly spread, because if you're living in a hellhole and you just can't wait to get out and go to some place that's nice and you can breathe and has the things you like, I mean, make your dental office like that. In fact, the best dental office I ever saw in my life was in South Carolina. It was at an oral surgeon's office, Brian Newworth. And I said, damn, why are your operatories so big? He goes, I'm an oral surgeon, and people come in here and they're squeezing around the chair and they're bringing in some little chair. He goes, I'm going to be in this room for 40 years, okay? I wanted it big enough for a couch. I wanted it big enough where you could just relax. And he says, why would you spend from 25 to 65 in a 10-foot by 10-foot room when you could have spent it in a 20 by 20 foot room? You know what I mean? And I thought, my God, that was actually the smartest guy in our graduating class at UMKC by a mile and a half. But again, you could never do that in Japan. When you're starting with a framework of ground at $1 million a square meter, you can't do that, but you can in South Carolina. Chicago seems like very high overhead real estate to me.
Yeah, well, we actually, that's why we've chosen to go out closer, like to the suburbs and closer to Indiana, actually, which has really been beneficial.
Where the real estate prices are not, they don't break your bank, but they're just, it's the sweet spot where if you're going to pay $4,000 in monthly rent, you might as well own and be your own landlord. And, ultimately the way we look at it is you build every business to be able to sell one day. And when you do sell, you do have that real estate kind of fall back on, that all this rent that you wouldn't have paid for 30 something years, which amounts to, I think, millions of dollars that you could have saved. Yes, you're going to pay property taxes, but it's nowhere near comparable to how much you would have paid in rent. And plus, you get to sell a chunk of that in 25 or 30 years or whenever you want to do that.
And the other thing that I don't like to talk about it because people think you're a conspiracy nut or you're crazy or whatever, but people get so settled. It's that boiled frog deal where if you put a frog in boiling water, he jumps right out. But if you put him in cold water and slowly bring it to a boil, he never registers the change in delta. His nerves don't fire, and he sits in there and he boils. And the debt situation is just out of control. I mean, they got, they were adding about $1 trillion a year. They added $3 trillion this year. You got the debt is insane, and everybody's banking on that the United States will always be the reserve currency, and you just can't always bank on things like that. And there's a lot of really big countries that are sick of having the U.S. dollar being the reserve currency, because to put it in perspective, if you're Argentina and you borrow a bunch of money in U.S. dollars, but you have the Argentina peso, I mean, you have to buy U.S. dollars. If America has a bunch of debt, they have the printing press. They can just print it. And it's not so much that, obviously, major competition in China, Russia, they would like to get off this U.S. dollar. I don't even think it's going to be China or Russia. It's going to be digital currency, and it's not going to be the Bitcoin crazy stuff. But I have seen with my own eyes, like in China, there's already a system where you store your money on your phone. It's a digital dollar, and you go to the store and you scan, and it pays for it. It scans that dollar, it makes a trade. It didn't even go through a bank. And right now, they're all banking on that, like when I write you a check, it's got to go to the bank, then it's got to go to a Federal Reserve clearinghouse, and it goes through all these processes. They're not even thinking, maybe someday I can just give you $1 like that used to be when you had a gold coin. And if there ever was a crack in the U.S. dollar, all these people have all their money in their 401k, and all their money's in paper. And then here you have money in bricks and mortar and buildings. And that's why I also, I'm very concerned about dentists who don't own their means of production, because every time there's been a great catastrophe in economics for any country, and in the last 5,000 years, you have 500 examples to look at. I mean, it's clear as a bell that shit can go south. Well, if you own your own dental office, you can just, if inflation's running away, you have the power to raise your prices. You have, if you're really broke, you have the power to live in your dental office and work 24 hours a day, pulling teeth, whatever. But if you're just an employee, you're just going to be, you're just a wage slave, and they're just going to fire you. And so it's nice to have a diversified basket. Like Kevin Bacon. I mean, I was listening to a story where, he lost all his money in the Bernie Madoff deal. It's like, well, why the hell did you have all your money with Bernie Madoff? Why would anybody have all their money with Bernie anybody? I mean, I don't care what your name is. Why would you have all your money with someone? What kind of diversification is that? But not just diversification in paper, but diversification in something real, like a land, a building, and a job. And I'll tell you what, during the Great Depression, the people that could work with their hands and could weld and hammer nails and milk cows and farm and all that, they survived fine. But the people who don't own their house, they don't own their car, they don't own their dental office, that don't own anything, well, in the 25% unemployment for 4 years, it was them. They were just let go. Demand went down, so you let go of all the wage slaves. And so it scares me to see so many kids not own their means of production. I wish more dentists would think like you. So again, ramping that thing up. So you go by old man. So you go by DrAOL.com. You go by his practice so he can spend more time at the diabetes clinic. And so how do you ramp it up specifically? Let's talk marketing. When you're buying a new patient head, is it digital? Is it Facebook? Is it direct mail, radio? How do you ramp that up?
I think it's a combination of the three that you just said. Pay-per-clicks, Google, I think is huge. Focusing on the minute you open your doors focusing on getting great reviews, it's a review-driven world where we have to focus, and those reviews will then drive organic traffic to your site. The idea is to get patients to land on your landing page, which is your website. So
you said the main thing, the first major deal was pay-per-click Google?
Google. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're talking about a pay-per-click Google ads for when they're doing a search.
Yeah,
correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because when someone breaks their tooth, they're not going to go start scrolling through Facebook until they see your tooth meme that you posted. They're gonna search.
Right.
And what are you what search words? How much do you pay? Like what is your budget for something like that?
A budget depends on the what we're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to get the office to $1 million, I think year one, you probably want to spend a good 8 to 10% in marketing in year one. So which means 80 to 100 grand really needs to go into getting that practice to $1 million. It should normalize to about 5% in year 2 or year 3 and get that under 5,000. But if you're going to ramp that practice from $1 million to $2 million, then you're going to ramp up that marketing effort again.
So so when you're ramping full speed, it's 8%, or did you say 8 to 10?
8 to 10%.
Damn, that is thinking outside the box. Wow. and the orthodontists were smarter on this because of just the reality that, the average, United States is a big country. So when people say ortho in America is $6,000, I mean, really? In Parsons, Kansas? You think Parsons, Kansas is the same as San Francisco? But it's about $4,500 to $7,500, depending on if you live in San Fran or Kansas. But they're going to realize that money in 2 years. Whereas a dentist, that patient, they're going to realize the same amount, but it's going to be like more over 5 years. So the orthodontist, since it was coming in 2 years, they could observe that and they got it much quicker. And I remember in the early 90s when most of the dentists were still debating to advertise or not, some of the orthodontists had already passed the 5% mark and they were just crushing it. And I remember the shock on people's face when they found out that someone was spending 5% of their collection on marketing. And it really comes down to what is the cost of acquisition of this patient? How much does this average patient spend? What is your overhead and what is the net? So if I spend $1 and I get $2 of net income back, I mean, you just would never stop it in a million years. So what is your average cost per head, would you say, on a Google pay-per-click to get a human in there? And then what would the new patient revenue be? And what would be the ROI on that?
Yeah, I think Google clicks right now, based on the demographics we're in, go anywhere from $3 to $10, $12. I think the practice that we've closer to the city is more expensive per click. But that one click can give us a patient. So roughly out of all the market spread across the marketing, when we track our dollar, I think we're spending about $130 to acquire a new patient.
And that alone, you can go. I used to play with my boys. Every time a new business opened in Ahwatukee, we'd go there and we'd park the car and we'd just sit out there on the hood and talk about it. And I'll never forget my little Zach, who now is a child. I can't believe it. He was only like 4 years old, and this new yogurt shop went up, and it was kind of tucked away. It wasn't seen from the intersection where there's a Dairy Queen sitting there. And Zach's like 4 years old, throwing his hand up like, what were they thinking? They you can't see him from the 4-lane intersection, and there's a Dairy Queen right on the corner, and man, we could call it. But one thing as we got older, because restaurants are the best example to do with your kids. Like when you buy them a stock, buy them a fun stock. Like they like to go to Disney. They might like Nike shoes. So don't buy them a stock of something they don't understand. Buy them a stock of something they play with and love, Nintendo, whatever. And then restaurants are the best examples because they got about a 40 to 60% 1-2 year mortality rate. And my boys, they learned very early. I said, Zach, you sit down on a table and the manager comes by and you ask him, any of his numbers, like how much does it cost in advertising to get a new customer in this restaurant? If he doesn't know, he's gone in 1 year. Just gone. And the ones that know their cost, like I'll never forget this one. There's only 3 restaurants that's been as long as my dental office in Ahwatukee. All the others just burned and churned. It's CK's. It's just unbelievable. But I'll never forget when I went into the one, the Italian one, and I said, "Hey, what happened to your tablecloths?" And the owner's wife said to me, "You know what? I just got tired of paying that bill. I mean, we were spending 55 cents on every table just for the damn cloth." I said, "No more cloths." And I thought, oh my God, she'll be here. She'll die in this restaurant. I mean, when you know your numbers like that, you're going to win. You just got to know your numbers. So you're spending $130 per new patient. And then, and so do you think that is a, that you make $130 of net income profit off that patient to pay for the ad?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. So the way we look at it is if a patient comes in and we spend $130 and we can make $150, that's a win, right? But ultimately, I think if you're going to operate at a 20% margin on each of these practices, that justifies the cost because we are coming out ahead at the end of the day.
Wow. And so back to so that's pay per click. Of your marketing, what percent would you say of your marketing is spent on that strategy, Google pay per click?
I think about 40% is on Google.
Okay.
And then the remaining 40 to 50% is on direct mail. Kind of drives us insane to spend that kind of money, but it seems to work. It seems to help with brand recognition. So
40% with pay per click and 40%, 40 to 50% on direct mail.
Correct. And then the rest on Facebook ads.
And what do you think of? Well, first of all, my gosh, I love it because the millennials, you know, they have their different cultures and they hate direct mail. They call it junk mail. They're on their phones at all times, so they don't ever look at or see direct mail, and they forget there's a bunch of old people out there. And I don't know, but when I'm on the ground, I've podcasted 1,500 people. And direct mail kills, especially for older people dentistry, like implants. And my gosh, when people just say direct mail is dead, I don't know what they're talking about. In fact, I was talking to my postman the other day because every time I see him, I'd say, I pretend like I was taking his picture and I go, "Here he is throwing away election ballots in Phoenix, Arizona," you know, and he just starts laughing. But he said he's this campaign that every single house has been getting 7 different ads per political opponent or political person per day per house. 7 ads. Those people are the best marketers in the world. I mean, they would never waste $1 anywhere. I mean, they know what they're doing. Gosh, they know what they're doing. They do their political opposition research and all that. But anyway, when they're all done, they are sending 7 pieces per day per house during this last campaign. And then you'll hear some 30-year-old millennial say, "Yeah, direct mail don't work. It's dead. It died a long time ago." It's alive and well. So Google first, pay-per-click, and Facebook was last. And what is your thoughts on Facebook and their strategy? And first of all, why is it last? But why is it still even on your list?
I think Facebook, just because it's one of the most visited social media sites in the world, I think it's good for brand recognition. So if ultimately you want somebody to go look at you on Google and then also look at you through a direct mail, also look at you on Facebook, that's what ultimately gets people to land on your site, which is what you want, and then pick up the phone and call you, which is what every dental practice out there wants. So it's mainly name recognition. I think Facebook, the cost per click is cheaper than Google.
Yep.
It doesn't mean it's more effective. I think Google is still number one. So that's one of the reasons we also do it. And I always, the way we think about it is we put another 5% just to experiment and see what could work. Yep. Can we throw it into Instagram ads? Can we throw it into church bulletins
billboards
or billboards? That's the other 5%, so to speak, that we play around with. But we need like a proven strategy that kind of works, and this seems to generally work for us.
Well, I'll tell you what I think of your ad. My gosh, I do it. Your websites, when I do it in my seminar, I'll just point to any person, I'll say, stand up and come here. And they stand up and they come here. I said, what did you just do? You just stood up and come here. I mean, I just said stand up and come here. I have no reason to just stand here. And I like it. You go to your page, you land on truebluedentistry.com, and the first thing I see is a button that says book your appointment. I mean, you're asking, you're trying to close the deal. And when you talk to dentists, I even called dental offices with the doc with me in the car, you know, and you can have a 20-minute conversation with their adorable and she never once asked you for your name, trying to schedule you. I mean, she'd just talk for an hour. I mean, you know, it sounds like, you know, it's like it's just unbelievable they don't go for the close. And then I like the fact that you got your pictures right up front, so they I mean, you guys are adorable, you're beautiful. They see who it is. But when you say, but here's the killer. When you say learn more, and you click into one of the two doctors, it's a YouTube video. And the guy at the Holiday Inn at the dental convention is telling you he understands search engine optimization. But funny how everyone at Microsoft doesn't know what Google's doing, but the guy at the Holiday Inn does. The guy speaking at the dental convention, he knows what Microsoft doesn't know. And Microsoft isn't going to tell anybody how that works, but they do. But it is obvious that a big part of that search is video. And experts that look at these, what they can find is that the majority of it's set up for video. Well, Google and YouTube are owned by Alphabet. And then I go to your doc website and you got an AOL.com email. Why would Sarji Byrne and Larry Page be trying to promote you with a Microsoft Outlook email? You know, and the data is clear that half the people are afraid of the dentist, and the other half are afraid of the cost. So when they see your gorgeous smiles, it look like, okay, they don't look like they're going to hurt me. And then I click in the video, and it's a YouTube. And so Jeff Bezos said it nicely. He said, you know, Amazon, when we started, it could have been called books.com, but we only went with books. It was the only thing you could sell with text because the pipes are so small. But we knew the pipes were getting bigger, and eventually we wanted pictures, JPEGs. And then eventually we wanted video. Well, you know, I remember buying that stock in 94. Now it's 2020. That was 25 years ago. And if I sent you a text, like my boys, you know, they'll text me, sup, SUP, sup. And I'm just like, all right. And, you know, and that's probably just a few ones and zeros with your computer. If you sent me a picture of what you're eating, that might be a block long. But you do, like this podcast, you do an hour-long podcast. I mean, that's ones and zeros to the moon and back. So people who have all Google stuff, all Google Gmails, YouTube videos, Google is going to support their own. And that's, you know, that's amazing. So I love your website.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very, very nice. So direct mail, the big question on that is, do you have an economic incentive? Some people like those. Some say it cheapens dentistry. On your direct mail, do you have some closed deal like $99 complete exam or any economic incentive, or what's your strategy on direct mail?
Yeah, it kind of changes. You know, it kind of depends on what we're running at that time. But one of our standard ones is, you know, a new patient special. Kind of have them come in for a complimentary consult, et cetera. I think that's been pretty standard for us. But, you know, as you rightly said, a lot of the older people are the ones that they work with direct mail. I once asked a patient, you know, can he write us a review? And we kind of text them to write us a review. And he says, I have an older son, like a flip cell phone. I said, well, what if I email it to you? He says, I don't have email. I was like, he's like, I don't even have internet at home. I'm like, all right, we're out of luck. I guess this is why we're doing direct mail. But yeah, it does. And actually in dentistry, it's got a much higher conversion rate than any other industry.
And is there anything you're aiming for? Like, do you aim for, like a lot of DSOs, it seems like the major strategy for DSOs is aiming at their minimum neighborhood is $60,000 median household year income, except for Aspen. I really like Bob Fontana and his Aspen model because he has a denture removable partial lab in the location, and his strategy is go where they ain't, and he's going in the area where everybody needs Medicaid. And I raise my hand, I won't do business with Medicaid because they're mobster thugs that if I screw it up, I'll go to jail. I mean, I don't do business with those type of people, but are you targeting, like in your 6 locations, would it be standard DSO, 60,000 median household income higher? Or are you looking for demographics you're going where they ain't, where there's, maybe a dentist population ratio that's greater than 1 to 2,000? Anything specifically you're looking at in the demographics?
Yeah, we definitely want to be where incomes are $60,000 to $80,000. I think that's our sweet spot too. Blue collar people with good insurances who can come in and use their benefits and whatnot. We're making it easy for them to use that insurance. That's generally the sweet spot. Yeah, this is Chicago, and it's really hard to get 1 in 2,000. Although we do have practices where we're the only dentist in town, and that's such a rarity. It's really hard to be able to do that here, but you then overcome that with a solid marketing strategy.
Nice. And was there? I mean, I can't believe we went well over an hour. Was there anything else that that you were thinking we'd talk about that I didn't ask about?
I think you're very comprehensive.
You're very comprehensive. You brought out,
one more follow up. Is there any high tech equipment? I mean, some dentists are strange. A lot of them think when they think that they're gonna really invest, it's time to invest in their office. They'll buy a laser, they'll buy a chairside milling, or they'll buy a CBCT, and it's a lot of cash. When you're setting up an office, do you have any high tech purchases that you spend a lot of money on that you think is worth it?
I mean, every one of our offices, of course, digital is we have to have digital in every office. We usually get a panoramic, and a couple of our offices have a CT. Those are the ones where we do implants. Anything else that I'm?
So when you say it's a digital office, you mean like instead of vinyl polystock, saying you're digital scanning your impressions, or are you talking about digital computers, or what do you mean digital?
All all software, pretty much paperless.
Digital X-rays,
DEXIS, or digital X-rays, and intraoral cameras with
and
what
practice
is a standard.
What practice management system did you go with?
Dentrix.
And do you like it?
Yeah. It runs great reports. That's the advantage.
So and what digital X-ray did you go with?
We use DEXIS.
DEXIS.
And then we have some Gendex as well.
And what about oral scanning for impression? Did you do impression material or oral scanning?
We do impression material, but we are looking at getting scanners as well.
And which scanner do you think you go with?
I think we're a fan of Trios, and of course there's the Medit scanner now that seems to be pretty price competitive. We might do one of those, but again, it's hard for us to just do it in one practice and not do it in the other, because I think all our doctors, we all have similar ways of practicing, so that it would be an investment for us.
Yeah, the only thing I've noticed on scanners, without a doubt, is if you have any intention of building an Invisalign practice. Of course, Invisalign's owned by Align Technology, and they own their scanner, and they don't play nicely in the sandbox, and it doesn't it doesn't go with 3Shape and all the other ones. But if you're just only doing implants, it would matter. But is Invisalign a big part of your practice, or is that a big growth thing?
It's not a very big part of our practice. I think ortho would be, say, less than 10% of our practice at this point.
Agree.
Well, I've noticed it's either one. I mean, it's either one or the other. I mean, the dentistry's flat around the world for a long time because we've had dentists for 200 years. So it's not a new growth industry. And but the only parts of it growing more than twice the rate of inflation is only implants and clear aligners, from Kansas to Kathmandu to if you live in a canoe. And it seems like you're either this soft and pretty, bleaching, bonding, Invisalign, or your blood and guts, extractions, root canals, and implants. And which one of those are you?
Probably the second.
The blood and guts, yeah. And that is far more in the profit zone, and I don't want to take up any more of your time than that, but I'll just end on, I always say these numbers because no one wants to hear them, and that is income for dentists. I mean, my gosh, it's Here it is. Are you ready? Drum roll, please. Number 1 highest paid, oral surgeons, 448. Number 2, periodontist, 330. 3, endodontist, 307. Pediatric dentist, God bless them, 304,000. I hope they spend it all on alcohol but ortho is where you fall under 300 and you start to 289. So, I mean, there's just the dentistry. I mean, you may think about it whatever you want, but dentistry started as barber surgeons. Remember, Pierre Fichard in Paris, France was the first one that thought it should go from a barber surgeon to drop the barber. And then over here, a century later, was G.V. Black. And then when I was in dental school, I'll never forget a conversation I had with George Rui, 92-year-old dentist in St. Joe, Missouri. We were sitting there having a beer, fishing some lake in St. Joe. And he says to me, I said, what year did you graduate? And he said, 27. Oh, my God.
Wow.
That was just 2 years before 1929. What was that like? And he said, to me, he said that the Great Depression was the greatest thing for dentistry. And I said, why? He said, well, we were all outside, and no one could afford to go inside. And then everything collapsed and got boarded up and went bankrupt, and it finally got so cheap that we could move our barber chair inside. And when we moved inside, us St. Joe dentists decided that we were going to give up the barber thing. Now, that's 100 years after Pierre Fichard. It takes a long time for it to go around the world. Like, I grew up in Kansas, and I noticed that whatever happened on California and Florida, within 10 or 20 centuries, it'd get to Kansas. And, it slows. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm sitting with a guy that practiced outside. And, that just puts everything in perspective. And so we start as blooded surgeons. And what that means, folks, is that you have to sell me veneers. If you said to me, hey, Howard, you should, bleach your teeth. Like, oh, well, okay, I'll write that down. But if you're in pain and you can't sleep and you need to do an extraction, or you want to save the tooth and do a root canal, and then you tell me that you can't pull a tooth or do a root canal, and then every economic contraction, whether it was Lehman's Day or the Y2K, the cosmetic dentist who could only do bleaching, bonding, and veneers, those were both times what made up the 80 to 100 practices that went out of business in the Y2K and the Lehman's Day. But the old man that could sit there and say, well, I can pull a tooth. Yeah, I can do a root canal. And a lot of people tell me things like, well, they don't like endo. Well, welcome to Earth. Wow, it must be pretty cool to be an animal
How did you know?
living on Earth that discovered something they don't like.
They'll do it. Yeah.
My gosh, our ancestors, think of how they lived the last go back 5,000 years. Could you imagine living 5,000 years ago and then your complaint is you don't like endo? Well, if it hurts, they are going to buy. And you're going to be busy, and you're going to make a lot of money. And if it's extra, they're not going to buy it in a downturn. So stick with blood and guts, and none of this pulp lover stuff that you do in a root canal and you try to stop a 0.5 millimeter from the apex because you're all a cosmetic dentist. Be an apical barbarian. Throw a puff of sealer at the apex. Extract teeth. Get people out of pain so they don't be the 8.5% that end up at the emergency room with an odontogenic origin, and that's where all the money is. But congratulations. Any little kids? Or you think any babies?
No.
The dog is our baby.
The dog is the baby.
Yeah, that and what I love about that, the last thing too, is that student loan and debt. Just remember that when you come out $440,000 or $400,000 student loans to raise a kid from birth to 17 is about $200. So if you got $400,000 student loans, just take 2 kids out of the picture, and you had no issues. But thank you so much for coming on the show. It was an honor to podcast you, and good luck with your mission.
Thank you, Dr. Fran. It was our honor. We really appreciate everything that you do.
It was an honor, Dr. Fran. It was a pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for everything you do.
All right. Tell Pumpkin hello from me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.